Marcia Boyles, your host, and I'm delighted this morning to introduce our two guests. We're starting with Donna Epps, who is our Resident Life Director. Donna, welcome.
Good morning to you too, Marcia.
George Ross, who is our Director of Garden Ridge. Welcome, George.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You two are going to be discussing something that, as we've been talking about, I have never heard discussed on Channel 6. As long as I've been hosting, which is a number of years. And the topic is going to be the relationship between resident life or independent living and Garden Ridge, or continuing care, as it's also called. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, we thought that it was important to come and talk about how we actually coordinate on an ongoing basis the services that are available to our residents, whether they live in independent living or in Garden Ridge, which, as you said, is also referred to as our continuing care services. And that is important because we collaborate because we actually have independent living residents who may be temporarily in Garden Ridge, but also through Ancillary Services, we actually provide services to residents in Garden Ridge. We can provide home health services, hospice services, as well as home support services in Garden Ridge.
Mm-hmm. And those are for folks who are there both temporarily as well as permanently.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Stop and remind me, there are 200 and some beds at Garden Ridge.
Right. So in Garden Ridge, we currently have a capacity of 282 residents.
282.
282.
How many of those are former independent living folks? Do you have any notion of that?
I would guesstimate that it's probably 95% of our residents in Garden Ridge have transitioned from independent living to Garden Ridge.
About 95%.
And I would say the kind of remaining 5%, we do have some folks who come to Garden Ridge from outside of Green Spring, and they come straight to Garden Ridge. They don't move into independent living first. Mm-hmm. They'll actually move in straight to Garden Ridge. But it's a pretty small percentage. I'd say the overwhelming majority, 95% of Garden Ridge residents have transitioned to Garden Ridge from independent living.
And we need to remind folks too, I think, the fact that you guarantee Garden Ridge accessibility to independent living Green Spring residents.
Right,
which is a really critical point for everybody, I think. Right.
It was actually something that I was speaking with a few residents from independent living because in Garden Ridge, our occupancy generally runs 95, 96, 97% occupied. So there's typically very few beds that are available for residents to move into. The nice thing is
waiting list, therefore.
Right. So sometimes we have a waiting list, but in an emergency, when someone is an emergent need for services and care at Garden Ridge, we can typically accommodate them to come at whatever time they need. We're always managing our availability to try to make sure we're still meeting resident needs, but we also don't want to have too many open beds at any one time. So, we've run a pretty consistent occupancy, anywhere from 95 to 97%. So in terms of having availability for residents for short-term care, we always try to make sure we have that availability any day of the week, any day of the weekend, and also for residents who may need to transition from independent living to Garden Ridge for long-term care. That's where we may sometimes have a waiting list. But
for the long-term care.
Right, but in an emergent need, we typically can have space to accommodate for an emergency admission to Garden Ridge.
Excuse me, Donna. I wanted to give just a little bit of background so that we're all sort of starting on the same page. And please, I was interrupting, so I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Go ahead, please continue with your coordination.
So I think I wanted to
issues there.
add a couple of things to what Donna was mentioning, that independent living, there's a full complement of services and assistance that's available for residents in independent living. Donna mentioned some of the ancillary services like certified home health. That's available to residents in independent living, and it's also available to residents in assisted living in Garden Ridge.
Now, is it the same group of people?
Yes, our certified home health services meet the needs whether someone is in their independent living apartment or whether they are in Garden Ridge in assisted living. And those are still the services that are paid for by Medicare.
You know, Donna, I think you're absolutely right that the average person doesn't think about the fact that we can get AIDS and hospice while we're at Garden Ridge.
As a matter of fact, most of our current hospice residents, and we have about 23 people who are on hospice caseload, the majority of them actually reside in Garden Ridge, and the hospice team from the Ancillary Services departments go to Garden Ridge to provide those services and coordinate the care with the same physicians that are in the medical center as well as with the nursing staff over in Garden Ridge.
All right, I don't think that's particularly well known. I mean, I think most of us think about hospice as being in our independent living apartments.
And it can be.
And it can be.
It can be,
is what you're saying.
absolutely. It can be.
Right.
But it also can be applied when you're either temporarily or permanently at Garden Ridge.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yes, that's a kind of a key point of the partnership we have. Again, in coordinating services, not only in independent living, but continuing those services in Garden Ridge. And I think hospice would be a really good example. No matter where someone may reside in Garden Ridge, it could be assisted living, it could be memory care, it could be skilled nursing, it could be long-term or short-term. All of those cases, hospice services are available in Garden Ridge, and and our hospice team can continue providing services even in Garden Ridge as well.
And so can AIDS. And again, we just don't think about the AIDS as following us over to Garden Ridge.
Right, and you're probably talking about our home support services.
We
Yes,
are, and I'm using the term AIDS.
No, that's fine because in home support we do have the nurses, the certified nursing assistants, and we also have the companions. And we do provide the aid and companion services over in Garden Ridge, and we coordinate with that. For example, there could be somebody in independent living, memory care that require services that are not covered by insurance anymore, and we can certainly provide that. And also, if somebody needs an extra level of care, like some 24-hour one-to-one support, frequently we'll get a call from the director of nursing from Garden Ridge to provide that support, and we send aides over to Garden
All right,
Ridge.
so it isn't requested by the resident. It's requested by your nursing folks over there normally.
It can be a combination
Or it could be
of
either
them
one or both.
Right.
Right, and again, that's where the collaboration and the communication comes in. That's the beauty of having all of the services available here on campus, because we work together with each other as well as with social services to coordinate the care that is needed, and that involves the resident and their family members or legal representatives as well.
Donna, let me be sure that I understand this correctly. The home support aides and companions are not paid for, of course, when we're in independent living, not paid for by Medicaid or Medicare. That's also the case at Garden Ridge, that it's private pay?
Right. So if a resident who resides in Garden Ridge, the monthly fees for Garden Ridge includes staffing and assistance and support for day-to-day activities. But if someone wanted to have home support services through Resident Life, they can come to Garden Ridge, but that would be an additional charge, an additional fee on top of the monthly fee.
George, about how many folks actually have home support aides?
In Garden Ridge, I don't know the number off the top of my head. I would say
It would vary, sure.
It varies. I would say it's not a common thing we see. So out of 282 residents, there might be 15 or 20 who may receive a couple of hours of support a day. But typically, when someone moves to Garden Ridge, our staffing is generally able to care for someone's needs and meet their needs as long as they're in the most appropriate level of care. And our staffing models can meet those needs without the need for additional support.
Okay. All right. What about rehab services? Is there coordination there?
Absolutely. Typically, someone may go to Garden Ridge for a short-term stay after they've had a hospital admission. So they are there receiving inpatient rehab and skilled nursing services.
Yes.
And then when they're discharged, if they're discharged back to their independent living apartment, we do coordinate, because most frequently they're discharged back to their independent living apartment with certified home health services, or they can go right to outpatient services as well. But with home health, that does include, in addition to nursing services, occupational therapy, speech therapy, as well as physical therapy. And sometimes we share some of those resources. So the speech therapist that a person saw over in Garden Ridge may very well be the same speech therapist they will see in their independent living apartment. It doesn't always happen that way, but we have recently added some staff, and we actually do have a speech therapist who works in outpatient, works in Garden Ridge, and also works for us in Ancillary Services.
Works in both.
Yes.
And certainly the records and information would be shared between the facilities.
Yeah, we're able to transfer information for continuation of care. So when someone, like an example Donna gave, when someone comes to Garden Ridge for short-term rehabilitation, we will coordinate the records and information about that resident, their needs, to certified home health, so that they're up to date with what have we been providing for them, what are the medications that they're receiving, what are the upcoming appointments they may have. So we're able to transfer that information to our partners in certified home health, so that they can continue that care, and so that there's a nice transition there for someone going from Garden Ridge back into independent living.
All right. And in addition to the health care per se, the social workers, while they're different at Garden Ridge versus independent living, they're all part of the same team. So the social work information also would be shared.
I would add in,
Yes.
We have a full complement of social work services that are available in independent living and also in Garden Ridge. One of the things that we work collaboratively is to make sure that residents who are in independent living, that they're having the most appropriate level of service. If residents in independent living need additional services or may need additional support, there's a great collaboration we have. We have a meeting once a week where we review any residents in independent living who may have an increase in needs.
Now, tell me who we is. When you say we have a meeting.
There's an interdisciplinary meeting that involves the social workers from independent living. It involves social workers from Garden Ridge, as well as some clinical support. So some of the nurses who
Right. We also have each Ancillary Services department is represented in that meeting. So there'll be someone from Hospice, home support, certified home health. We also have a representative from security there, from the admissions counselors from Garden Ridge, who all attend that meeting.
Is this a new approach?
No, this has been an ongoing meeting that we do, and it's really to make sure that we don't have a resident who's residing in independent living who may be having a decline in their health, and if we're not communicating about residents who may be at risk of that, we want to make sure they're in the most appropriate setting and making sure that we're providing the services that they need to maintain their well-being, maintain their health, help to maintain the environmental condition of their apartment. We want to make sure that folks are safe. So this is a meeting where we get interdisciplinary team members together to make sure that we have the right services in place, that folks are in a good and safe environment, safe situation, and then we're able to make recommendations and make sure that we have, if we don't have services in place, that we work with that individual and with their families to make sure that they have the most appropriate care in place.
I think we're being better taken care of than even we knew. The fact that you're doing that, this is certainly news to me, and I think probably news to most of the residents. I think it's excellent. Please understand that I am commending you. I see our time is drawing to a close here. Anything else you'd like to talk about? This, again, I think is extremely interesting. We are not, I think, have not been aware of what the kinds of coordination and collaboration has been. So this is helpful.
Well, that's great, and we look forward to sharing more of this type of information with the community now that we've gotten such great feedback, because it is important for people to know that we are working behind the scenes to make everyone's stay here safe and enjoyable at the same time. And a lot of work goes into what we do behind the scenes for our residents here.
I think one of the things that we who have been here for some time are noticing on all levels, and Donna, I think this exemplifies it, is the greater need, the greater effort to be transparent in a number of different areas, staffing, financial, things of that sort. And I think the residents really do appreciate it. So I think this is consonant with exactly that same overall effort. And I think we all appreciate it. So thank you both for coming today.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you soon.